what kind of a social structure you would need to endure as a time-traveling civilization. It would have to be an extremely stable society, which means an extremely rigid society. You're going to have an extremely cohesive, totalitarian ruling group that are as much the prisoners of themselves as anybody else.
I am not excusing at all the things that these entities would have been doing with us, like you were mentioning. But I wonder if this is an inevitability of having freedom in the first place, where, let's say, if we were to break out, would some of us, gifted with the ability to transcend this particular prison, start creating our own little prison, to start creating our own little empire where we get to do whatever we want because we have the power to do that?
There's absolutely no doubt about it. One of the most disturbing arguments that I make in Closer Encounters is that, frankly, if you think in majoritarian terms, if you're someone who's of a democratic mindset, and you like to think in terms of what's good for the majority of people, what benefits most of society, one or another society, or the whole planetary society, well, then the UFO cover-up is entirely justified. It is entirely justified because the vast majority of people on this planet, regardless of what society they come from and what their ethnic and religious background is, are absolutely unprepared to deal with the realities of this phenomenon, to come face to face empirically with the structure of the control system that we find ourselves in, to wield practically the types of technologies that the overlords governing this system have. If you were to release those technologies publicly, like let's just take zero-point energy, right? Hal Puthoff, who is a physicist who worked at the Stanford Research Institute on contract with the CIA to develop the remote viewing program, and who's worked in the classified engineering world for many decades, he has been for some time pursuing zero-point energy research at his Institute of Advanced Study. And he makes this point about how the same ZPE propulsion drive that will give you anti-gravity craft that can at least appear to travel faster than the speed of light, and the same ZPE generator or power plant that will effectively give you free energy. In other words, there's more power coming out of that system than is being put into it to run it. That same basic technology can be turned into a bomb just vastly more destructive than the most high-yield thermonuclear weapon, right? I mean, and this is true in terms of every energy source, every power source that we've known throughout the course of history, from gunpowder, which can be used to propel something in a positive sense, to, its application in ballistics, all the way to rocket fuel, to gas, which can be used both to generate power or to propel missiles into civilian populations, all the way to nuclear fission and fusion with their dual use as a source of electrical energy and a source of mass destruction. This has been true of the whole history of energy. Why would we think it would be any different with zero-point energy? No, zero-point energy, by the same token that it provides you with an extraordinary electrogravitic propulsion system and with, quote, free energy, unquote, is also going to give you a bomb which, as Hal Puthoff puts it, can take a coffee cup's worth of mercury thorium, let's say, and vaporize the oceans of Earth with it. So you're going to take this thing and put it in a guy's backyard like it's a propane tank, and he can use that as his free energy device? Really? You have that much trust in your neighbor?
Yeah, Hank Hill being able to annihilate the entire world.
Yeah, and okay, maybe we can trust Lev, but can we trust this or that political group that has grievances? This or that so-called group of terrorists. And so here we come to the heart of the problem. And I just took zero-point energy. There's all kinds of other things, all kinds of other technologies and techniques that they have, including psychic techniques, including psychotronic technologies, which pose a profound problem of personal responsibility. The kind of society that you would need, one of either two types of societies, in order to be able to effectively wield these technologies and techniques. Either it has to be an absolutely totalitarian society, where there's total collectivism, absolute cohesion, no personal freedom, where everyone is on an organic level, always already in line with the plan and with the program. And that doesn't mean everyone's enlightened, Much more likely, it means it's a pyramidal society where the technologies and techniques are kept out of the hands of the majority of the population. The majority are a herd who are used like slaves of various types, as in the Hindu caste system. I mean, in the Hindu caste system, you got slaves and you got slaves. Same in ancient Egypt, right? You have, the bazaris, the worker class, they're a kind of slaves. I mean, they're wage slaves, and the way in which their existence is entirely materialistic is a form of spiritual slavery. But then you have manual laborers and so forth who are slaves in a much more evident sense. In any case, you got this mass of slaves building upwards pyramidally toward a capstone of completely unthinking soldiers or guardians or warriors, unthinking, collectivistic, who are without any doubt, without any question, executing the orders of the people who are at the capstone, who themselves are totalitarians worse than the North Korean leadership, they don't doubt themselves. Maybe they go on sadistic binges, but they don't doubt themselves ever, and they don't doubt the plan. Now, that's one form of society where you can have 0-point energy, because you don't need trust. There's no individuality. You don't need trust.
That's
it's
true.
entirely unified. The other kind of society is one where you have such a degree of individuation and the development of human personality that each individual is so free-spirited and so positively devoted to their personal development and to maximizing their creativity that they would never even think to harm their fellow in that community. A maximal trust society of maximally individuated and self-individuating people.
But is that realistic?
Absolutely not in terms of the world we have today, or in terms of the world we'll be able to achieve before we have to come face to face with these Nordics. We are fast approaching what people in the tech community call the technological singularity. In other words, there's a convergent advancement of various technologies, from genetic engineering to artificial intelligence to robotics to nanotechnology, which within the next 30 years, it's going to make it impossible to hide something like 0-point energy from the public. Okay, Martin Aircraft or Lear Aircraft or whatever, who may have hit upon this technology in the 1950s, they've been able to bury it in black projects, for a certain period of time. But once we have artificial intelligence systems designing aircraft another 10 to 15 years from now, once we have, aeronautical engineers, I don't know, maybe in Singapore or whatever, who have their IQs enhanced to 200 because they were genetically engineered embryos, at some point it's going to be impossible not to hit upon the type of basic technologies that the UFO pilots have today. And if they're running a control system that we're ensconced in, do you really think that they're going to let us get to that point where we can achieve not only technological parity with them, where we could resist them, get out from under their control, right? Do you think they're going to let us get to that point? No, obviously not. So what's going to happen within the next 30 years? We're going to have disclosure, quote, disclosure, unquote, forced upon us by the Nordics, and in a situation that's manufactured so that we are in an extremely weakened and demoralized position when we face them. That's being created now. I mean, COVID from 2020 onward is the beginning of a process of the controlled demolition of our advanced industrial society, so that we're literally on our knees when these bastards step out of their flying saucers or their black limousines, these 7-foot-tall Nordic people, and they basically say they're here to cure disease and poverty and to basically have a system of global harmony and resource conservation, so on and so forth, who knows, under the flag of the United Nations. But here's the problem. That point in time is 20 to 30 years from now. If you want an alternative to that, meaning that we take these technologies and techniques into our own control, and we refuse to be subservient to these overlords, we refuse to have them define our destiny, well, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to sacrifice the majority of the population of the planet, because the majority of the population of the planet are not even close to being able to make that transition in consciousness within the next 20 to 30 years. They're not close to making it within the next 200 to 300 years. And so we're faced with a choice. Either we can be majoritarians, we can be Democrats, and we can say, well, for the sake of the majority, we will go back under these overlords. We will surrender, and maybe someday on the distant horizon, we'll have an opportunity to rebel again. Maybe somehow, like after the destruction of Atlantis, slowly over thousands of years, we might build the Library of Alexandria again, only to have it burned by something else like Christianity. Right?
Right.
Or we can say, which is my position, fuck that, I'm not going backwards. Never again. There are a group of people on this planet who are ready to make that evolutionary leap, and I speak for that group of people. And I don't care whether 90% or 99% of the planet is ready to make that evolutionary leap. There are humans who are ready to make it, and as far as I'm concerned, there's no price too high to pay to make sure that that group of people, however small, does not wind up enslaved and oppressed under these overlords again. If the majority of the planet would basically unleash utter mayhem and vicious, violent chaos over the world, if they were to come into possession of whether it's zero-point energy or whether it's various psychotronic technologies or psychic techniques, like trainable psychokinesis at a high level, right? If they're not ready to handle those technologies and techniques, that doesn't justify the rest of us who are being subjected to another totalitarian hierarchical control system. It doesn't justify our being set back again by thousands of years and being deprived of this knowledge, of this science and technology. No, we're going to move forward. If we have to move forward without 99% of the population, we'll move forward without 99% of the population. That's evolution. Evolution is the selection of an adaptive minority and the extinction of a non-adaptive majority. That's how evolution works in nature, right? There's a mutation. The mutation, by definition, is not a change across an entire species. A mutation is a rare aberration, and the mutation is selected for by the environmental stresses. In this case, talking in social evolutionary terms, although there's an ecological dimension to this too, but talking in social evolutionary terms, the environmental stress is the situation we find ourselves in, with the imminence of the technological singularity, the need for UFO disclosure, the need to come into some kind of open public relation to these goddamn Nordics. And that's the selection pressure. And so if only a small adaptive minority has mutated to where it can become the kernel of a new species moving forward from there, well, I'm for the evolution of the new species. I'm not for mass retardation.